Afghanistan. I'm joined by a terrific group of reporters today as we wait for the president to leave. John King, when I hear any comparison to Iraq and Vietnam, I say, hold on a second, for so many reasons. There's so many differences in those. It would take the whole hour to describe them. But when you're talking about the way that the public feels about this, that's the context, and that is what these pollsters were trying to get at. And it is stunning.
It is stunning. It was opposition to the Iraq War that allowed the United States to elect its first African-American president, Barack Obama. That opposition was so fierce, the American people said, we want big change. We want dramatic change. That is what you feel when you travel the country. Look, the president wants to sell no taxes on Social Security. Republicans in the midterm elections are trying to sell, remember, we cut your taxes on overtime and tips. They cannot break through because whatever little you got for that, you're paying at the pump for most people out there. The president said this would be quick. It's past 60 days. The president said, yes, gas prices would spike, but he would get out pretty soon and they would come down. They went up again overnight. So almost everything the president has said repeatedly, Iran has agreed to give up its nuclear materials. Iran has not agreed to give up its nuclear materials. So much of what the president has said has simply been proven by the days and days that pass and by the facts to simply not be true. So politically, this has become, at least in the moment, you're right. You cannot compare long-term to Vietnam or long-term to Iraq. We'll see where we are down the road. But politically, this has become a disaster for him, and he's not on the ballot. It's a huge disaster for his party.
Right. I mean, I said that we can't compare it because, Vietnam, obviously there was a draft. Iraq, and there was boots on the ground. Iraq, there were boots on the ground. Right. None of that is happening right now. But interestingly, the president, and even this week on Capitol Hill, the defense secretary is making those comparisons unsolicited.
Operation Epic Fury has delivered a decisive military result in just weeks. Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, as the president has pointed out, all took years. How long we were in Iraq, how long we were in Afghanistan, how long we were in Vietnam. Iraq took how many years? Afghanistan took how many years? And they were nebulous missions that people went along with. This is different.
So he's absolutely right about the time frame. But what the public is seeing is a sour on this war far before what happened in those wars.
I think that's an interesting choice to try to compare this war with those for exactly the reasons we've talked about. But the biggest problem for the president is, and this comparison adds to that, is that they're still struggling to explain what they're doing to the American people. They don't understand why the administration is doing this war, what is going on, and they're just not making this case effectively to the voters. And we're seeing that in this polling. It's not just Democrats who are against the war. It's independents. It's a good chunk of Republicans as well. And this is just going to continue to get worse if the president continues these actions in the Middle East.
Yeah, and there are lots of discussions about discussions, even this morning. There's clearly a hope that this thing finds a way to end. Problem is, this president is learning that not everything is Venezuela. Not everything is, in his first term, killing Soleimani, a terrorist. That was kind of quick and one and done. That the enemy gets a vote.
Yeah, I constantly think of something the president himself said fairly early on in the opening weeks of this conflict, talking about the Strait of Hormuz, where he said it takes two to tango. And I think about that just about every day when you look at the current environment and you look at the state of play of things. And the president can't will this to conclusion on his own. If he doesn't want to expand the military operation, he can't force it to conclusion on his own. And that dynamic there, that tension point between what has been, I think you talk to military officials and former military officials, even those critical of this administration, what they were able to accomplish during the air campaign was without a doubt a success in every form of how you would map it out, I think. The reality is, though, there are constraints to what you can accomplish. The bigger problem right now is the economic reality that is speeding along and accelerating by the day, which dovetails with the political reality, which is there is no resolution to the most important piece of the economic puzzle here, which is the effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz. It's actually closed even further because of the U.S. blockade on top of the Iranian blockade. And until markets and, more importantly, I think downstream producers especially have a sense of when it's going to end, how it's going to end, and then start the process of getting it back open, which is going to take months and months, the economic pain is only going to increase and accelerate.
Well, and let's go back to that. I'm going to put back up the gas prices today and what they were just, yesterday and earlier this week, you see. John, you spend a lot of time traveling around. We're going to talk about your recent trip to Ohio later in the show. But how much do you hear about this from voters as you
all the time. So Trump has had this firm grip on rural America for a decade. If you live in rural America, what do you have to do? You have to drive longer distances. Sometimes it's 25 minutes to the gas station. So you're spending $4 a gallon just to go pay $4.20 a gallon. The gas you bought a week ago that was $4, now you're driving to spend $4.20 on it. If you live in rural America, you might have a farm or you might have equipment on your land. That takes diesel fuel. That's even more expensive than that. Fertilizer, additives for the soils. That's even more than that. So if you overlay that, look, this is pain for all Americans, right? My job is to cover politics. You overlay that with a state like Texas where there's a competitive Senate race, a state like North Carolina, competitive Senate race, a state like Ohio, competitive Senate race, a state like Iowa, possibly governors and a Senate race in several congressional districts. What do they have in common? They're rural, largely rural. People are driving and spending more money. And so even if they get the idea that Iran is a threat, they have not heard from their commander-in-chief a clear plan. And this is the mistake Trump makes all the time. He says it will be fast and it will be easy. Inflation coming down will be fast and easy. It was just Sleepy Joe. Iran, it's going to be a few days. We'll be fine. We're 60 days and counting now. So his own words get him in trouble.
Well, real quick.